Hello, health champions. Today we're going to talk about what would happen if you were to completely cut out sugar for 30 days. I want to challenge you to watch this video carefully and understand exactly what sugar does to your body, and then join me in a challenge to eliminate it completely for 30 days and just see what would happen to your quality of life. The first thing that would happen is you would reduce your short-term cravings. And there's two reasons for this. The first is that sugar is a very addictive drug. And just like all other addictions and drugs, the best way to conquer it is to just eliminate it completely for a period of time, and your body will stop craving it so much. The second reason is that you will stabilize your blood sugar. So whenever you eat sugar or processed foods or processed carbs, then your blood sugar will rise very quickly. And then you release insulin, which is a hormone that will bring your glucose back down. But when something rises very quickly, you need to release a lot of insulin to deal with it quickly, and now it's going to drop quickly. And then when it drops quickly, you get a craving, you get a hunger. Your body wants to raise that blood sugar, and on and on and on this goes in a perpetual roller coaster. And every time that you are at the bottom of the blood sugar curve, you get hypoglycemia, then you will have cravings for more sugar. So when you eliminate that sugar, the fast carbs, and you eat real food with protein and fat, now your glucose will rise very, very, very slowly. It will drop very, very slowly over a matter of hours. And then your body will have no problem stabilizing the blood sugar. So that will reduce your cravings because your body will have a stable energy supply. The next thing that happens is you reduce your long-term cravings. And here's something interesting that most people don't understand, that where does this sugar go? They think that you get a blood sugar spike, and then when the blood sugar drops, then that sugar mysteriously disappears, right? No, it either gets used in the moment or it gets put into storage. And we have a very limited capacity to store sugar. We can store about 1 day's worth of energy, but we can store a whole lot of something else called fat. And we could store months worth of fat for energy. So every time that we have a blood sugar spike, it has to come down. We can use a tiny little bit in the moment, but most of it actually gets turned into fat. And the whole purpose of storing that extra fat is for future energy needs. If we were to ever have a time where we don't have food, which doesn't happen much. So now this fat is supposed to be turned back into energy, but when we eat a bunch of sugar frequently, we release insulin frequently, we become insulin resistant. We develop high chronic levels of insulin, and whenever we have high chronic levels of insulin, now we can't turn that fat back into energy. It's stuck in that fat cell. And then we get more cravings again. So by cutting down the sugar and reducing the insulin levels, we become more insulin sensitive. We start functioning the way that we're supposed to. We're becoming metabolically flexible, and the body knows how to access that fat again. And then we become less hungry. We have less cravings. We can control our appetite. We can stop overeating, and we can lose some weight and get rid of that pesky belly fat. I bet you hear all the time that sugar is bad, but complex carbs are good, because they tell you that there's a world of difference between the two. But the fact of the matter is that they're basically the same thing. So when we talk about sugar, we're talking about a molecule with 6 carbons. It's a ring. It's just the way the molecule looks. It's a very small molecule. It's absorbed in the bloodstream very, very quickly. And this would be called a monosaccharide, meaning just one unit. And then if we link two of these together, we have a disaccharide. This is how most of the sugar looks when we get it. When we eat sweet things from refined sugar or candy or fruit, this is primarily what the sugar looks like. And then they tell you that this is really, really bad, but that complex carbs, starch, is good. So this ring looks the same thing, but I'm just going to draw it like this to save some time. And this is what starch looks like. It's the exact same molecule. It is the same exact glucose molecule, but they just link them up by hundreds or thousands. And they tell you this is really bad and this is really good, that you should avoid this as much as possible, but they tell you to eat 300 grams of this every day. The problem is that they're essentially the same thing, that this will enter your bloodstream in seconds, and this will start breaking down and entering your bloodstream in a matter of minutes. So both of them are going to spike blood sugar very, very quickly, and they'll contribute to these cravings that we talked about. So what you're looking for instead is fat and protein, because they both take hours to be processed, and that's how you get that nice smooth curve. It's like rocket fuel on the fire, which is not great because the fire doesn't give you heat very long, versus a log on the fire. The fat and the protein, it's like putting a log on the fire. It'll keep you warm all night. That's the kind of energy supply that your body needs. So while they are very, very similar, there's one reason though that sugar is especially bad. First of all, most of the time it's very processed, so it's a totally empty calorie. But the second thing is that the sweet taste is very, very attractive to our taste buds. It's very addictive. So when we get that sweet taste over and over, it's like a drug. That is the drug effect. It makes us go look for more. It makes us want more of not just the sugar, but of other carbohydrates as well. Now let's talk about 1 gram of sugar. How bad could that be? Well, all of this sugar that we're talking about, the critical part is the blood glucose. How much is in the bloodstream at any given time? And that is usually measured in milligrams per deciliter. And the healthy level, a really healthy level, is somewhere around 80 milligrams per deciliter. The average person has a total blood volume of about 5 liter or 50 deciliters. And then we have to also realize that this blood is measured in the serum, in the liquid portion of the blood, but some of the blood is also solid, the cells, the red blood cells, the white blood cells. So the serum, the liquid portion, is about 60%. So now if we multiply this out, and we come up with the total blood glucose for a healthy average sized person, we get no more than 2.4 grams, less than half a teaspoon at any given time in the entire body. And now if we go from a really healthy level up to a fasting glucose of 100, which is pre-diabetic, and we keep these the same, now we are up to 3 grams. We've only increased 0.6 grams. It's like it's so little you could barely see it. And if we go all the way up to a full diabetic level, we now have 3.8 grams of glucose in the bloodstream at any given time. So to go from super healthy to diabetic, we're only talking about 1.4 grams. So I'm showing you this to demonstrate how tightly regulated your blood glucose is, and also how just a tiny little bit can make a huge difference once your body loses the ability to regulate this, once you become a little resistant. So I had a patient who was doing really well. He was doing low carb, he was getting some exercise, he was fasting, he was losing weight, lowering blood pressure, but he could not get his blood glucose down. It kept hovering around 125. And we looked at it, and we looked at his food, and then one day he said, there's something I've forgot to put on this food journal. I've been taking some vitamin D gummies and some apple cider vinegar gummies. And it was such a tiny little thing. He thought of them as a supplement, so it didn't count. But the average serving of a couple of gummies will have 3 to 4 grams of sugar. And then if you take some apple cider vinegar gummies, that's another 3 to 4 grams of sugar. So when you don't eat anything else and all that sugar gets into the bloodstream really, really fast, now even a gram of sugar, 1 gram of sugar, can make a huge difference. So as soon as he realized that and he cut out his gummies, his blood glucose went from diabetic levels into the 80s in a matter of days. And not everyone is going to be that sensitive, but we need to understand these things so that if this happens to you, that you know to watch out for it. Now, A1C is a little bit better marker for blood glucose than glucose itself, because measuring blood glucose is just a moment in time, whereas A1C or hemoglobin A1C measures a 3 to 4 month average. And this is based on something called glycation. When glucose sticks to a protein, such as hemoglobin, then they form a very tight bond that doesn't come apart. So now we can measure how much of the hemoglobin has glucose or sugar stuck to it, the glycated hemoglobin. And because the average red blood cell lives about 3 to 4 months, now we have a wonderful measurement of the average of what your blood sugar has been in the last 3 to 4 months. And then you take the A1C and you put it in a formula that you can look up if you're interested. But basically, if your A1C is about 4.8, which would be a low healthy level, then your blood glucose on average would be 91. If your A1C is 5.0, then your average glucose for the last 3 to 4 months would have been about 97. So that's not your fasting blood glucose, that's averaged in with every meal that you've had. So if you eat less sugar and you eat more fat and protein, you're not going to get these huge spikes that are going to drive the average up. And you're going to still have an average glucose that is really, really close to your fasting level. And you'll often see different levels that are sort of within a norm. But to me, 5.3 is about the upper end of optimal, what's really healthy. And now our average glucose is about 105. Now, if we go a little bit further up here at 5.7, that is the cutoff for pre-diabetes. And now the average glucose is about 117. And this is where it's starting to get out of control. So you see, there's not a huge difference in these numbers, but this is a very tightly controlled variable. Your body wants to keep the blood glucose in the 80s and 90s if at all possible. And if we get up to 6.5, that is the cutoff for type 2 diabetes. Now your average glucose would be about 140. So just a few more points and it's getting totally out of control. And if people don't catch this early, if they're not measuring this, there's a lot of type 2 diabetics that have uncontrolled glucose. They don't watch their diet and they're not taking any medication. So you could have an A1C of 10, 15, 20. So here already your glucose on average is about 240. And now we're getting into some really big problems of health. But here's what we need to understand about glycation. Glycation has to do with sugar. But hemoglobin is not the only thing that it sticks to. It can stick to all kinds of different proteins in the body. And when it sticks to proteins in different tissues, it very often creates something called AGEs, advanced glycation end products. And these are responsible for all kinds of different damage, of oxidative damage, of free radicals in the body. They're basically the driver of a lot of premature aging and a lot of degenerative disease. Another protein that is often glycated happens to be LDL, low density lipoproteins. And this is where heart disease comes from. When LDL particles get glycated and oxidized and inflamed, but primarily glycated, then they shrink, and now the body can't clean them out. They get stuck, and they're small enough to kind of get through the little passages in the walls of your arteries. So now when they get through the wall, they form the plaques that cause atherosclerosis and heart disease. So this glycation is a huge, huge problem. It's at the center of virtually every disease process, or most disease processes, and it is sugar that drives it. But there has to be some side effects, right? So the number one thing is that whenever you change something, your body gets a little bit of a shock. It doesn't quite know what's going on. So with these changes, you might get a little bit cranky, but realize that it's only going to last for a few days, 2, 3, 4 days. That's all it takes for your body to start adapting and changing its internal machinery. And during those first few days, your body will go through something called enzyme upregulation and downregulation. So the first thing it's going to change is when you stop putting in sugar, now it's going to decrease the enzymes and the pathways and the metabolic machinery related to sugar. And instead, it has to find another fuel source. So it's going to upregulate all the pathways and all the enzymes that deal with fat. But right at first, if your body is used to sugar and carbs, now it's going to feel deprived and you're going to feel bad because you're removing the primary source of fuel. But once your body has gotten just a few days of adapting, now the side effects change to completely different. So what you're now going to notice is you have less mood swings because the mood pretty much follows your blood sugar roller coaster. So if you don't have a roller coaster in the blood sugar, you're not going to have a roller coaster on mood swings. Then over time, you find that not only do you have less swings, but the overall level of mood is going to increase. You feel better because you don't have all those low points. And if you take it just a little further now, because once you cut out the sugar, you get more protein and fat, you find you don't need to eat as often. So if you go really low carb, and this isn't necessary for everyone, but if you get into the point where you start making some ketones, ketones are a fabulous fuel for the brain. It's more stable, and if you're insulin resistant, then it's a fuel that can get into the brain regardless of your insulin status. Whereas sugar, if you're insulin resistant, it can't get into the brain properly. So with this, you might actually notice that you get better focus, that you're more productive, you can stay on track and get more things done. And now if you cut out the sugar, you eat more fat and proteins, now it's easier to go lower the carbs even further because you don't have so many cravings. You don't need the carbohydrates because your body knows how to make energy from fat. You're making some ketones. Now you find that you don't need to eat as often. It is completely unnecessary to do snacks or even 3 meals a day. So most people find twice a day is perfect. And now with that longer fasting period, your body starts making some human growth hormone. And along with that, it also makes something called BDNF, brain-derived neurotrophic factor. And these two are like miracle grow for the brain. Every time you learn something, your body, your brain, nervous system makes new synapses. It rewires the brain physically. And you can't learn without this happening, and it can't happen without these two hormones. And when you get a little bit of fasting or a little bit of exercise, you make more of these. So going cutting out the sugar, going more low carb, and a little bit longer between meals, you're actually going to find that your ability to learn improves. Whether you're 5 years old or 90 years old, it's going to happen much easier for a 5-year-old, obviously, but the point is, even at 90, you have this capacity, and it can be stimulated by you doing this. But the side effects don't stop there. When you cut out sugar, you will find that inflammation goes down because insulin tends to be pro-inflammatory. Ketones and growth hormone tend to be anti-inflammatory. So now you might see some benefit with arthritis or joint inflammation. You will probably see less joint pain. You probably notice that you feel more flexible because tight muscles are mostly tight to protect joints that don't work properly. And then, of course, you probably heard that it's bad for your teeth to eat sugar. So by cutting that out, you also improve the health of your teeth. And you do it two ways because the sugar feeds the bacteria to cause cavities. But also, when you cut out the sugar, you improve your mineral absorption. So you have more of the calcium and minerals to create strong, healthy teeth. And if that wasn't enough, there's more side effects. And these are the ones you should seriously pay attention to. Most people start getting healthy because they get a diabetes diagnosis or they want to lose weight. But this goes so much deeper because sugar also causes edema, which is swelling around the blood vessels and around nerves. It causes tissue damage and vessel damage. And in doing that, it also causes neuropathy, meaning you can't feel, you can't use your extremities so well. And a lot of times they end with amputations. And these blood vessels that get damaged are both in the kidney and in the eye. So kidney failure and blindness are primarily caused by diabetes and high blood sugar levels. And because of the glycation that we talked about that causes advanced glycation end products and glycated and damaged LDL, sugar also causes cardiovascular disease and stroke. In fact, it's the primary driver for both of those conditions. And as I talked about in the previous video, sugar is also the primary cause for dementia. And perhaps the most serious side effect is that you'll probably end up living longer. But unlike all the people around you who are simply dying longer and kept on artificial life support for the last 30 years through medication and machines and props, you might actually be healthy enough to enjoy it. And if you cut out the sugar for 30 days, this is going to set you on a path where you feel so much better, you understand more what sugar was doing and how good you can feel, and then you're going to be on the path for the rest of your life. You don't want to say, I'll do it for 30 days and then I'll start eating all my candy and drinking my soda again. That's obviously not going to work. So I challenge you to stop sugar for 30 days. And then as you notice how you feel, now you start sharing the experience. You start sharing the results. That's the purpose of this channel, is to change the paradigm of health in the world. And you can do your part because people actually read these comments. If something has 1,000 thumbs up and 100 comments, that means 10,000 people actually read that. And if you have some good experiences, then tell people so that they understand this is real. If you enjoy this video, you're going to love that one. And if you truly want to master health by understanding how the body really works, make sure you subscribe, hit that bell, and turn on all the notifications so you never miss a life-saving video.